What's good, everyone? OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the explosive sales of the Nintendo Switch in Japan and also how Nintendo deals with next generation. Now, I've discussed this before, but I get asked this question so many times and we're getting a lot of new subscribers, so I figured I'd talk about it with some new data based off of what we know about the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. So let's first start off with these big sales in Japan. Every single week, the Famitsu sales data comes out where they get the retail sales for everything in Japan only, not all of Asia, just Japan. And once again, retail only, not digital sales. So you can kind of get an idea of how new games are selling, what the best selling games are, and just how the systems are doing as well. Because not only do we get retail sales numbers, we also get hardware sales numbers as well. So the brand new game that was out this week was Powerful Pro Baseball. This is for the week of July 6, 2020 to July 12, 2020, with the Powerful Pro Baseball opening up at the most with 94,876 units on the Nintendo Switch and another 91,547 units on the PlayStation 4. Now, the big thing here is Sword Art Online. The new game came out from Bandai Namco, and it sold 73,000 units, which is good. That's not bad in the grand scheme of things, but for Sword Art Online, that's a bit lower than what they usually do for a brand new game that wasn't released late in Japan or anything like that. It's not a port of anything. It's a brand new game with the PS4 title being pretty much the lead platform. Now, I've heard a number of things with this game, that it doesn't run too well, there's crashing and some other issues as well, but at the same time, they always usually have a portable version of Sword Art Online. You'll have like a PS Vita version, and that hasn't been happening lately, with the PS Vita pretty much being dead even in Japan. And the Nintendo Switch, Bandai Namco's been a little bit late to get Sword Art Online on that system. Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet came late, and also the other game, the Hollow game, came late as well. So they weren't quite up to date in terms of developing Sword Art Online on the Switch, so they weren't able to get Sword Art Online, the newest one here, on the system on the same date as the PS4, Xbox One, and PC, and it might have suffered just a bit. As you can see with the Powerful Pro Baseball, obviously you want to have a Switch version in Japan because you can get a lot more sales. Now we're looking at Sword Art Online here, only with that 73,000. Obviously the Xbox One version isn't going to show up anywhere, and we're not going to get PC sales, but PC sales in Japan are never really that great anyway. So like I said, it's not necessarily horrible, but I think that the game quality in terms of things and not having a Switch version definitely hurt day one or week one sales for this franchise. We'll see if it rebounds just a bit. I think that if they get patching it, maybe it can help out. But definitely not good to see for the Sword Art Online series, but it's not like a flop or super failure by any means. And of course, we're going to have the Western release of the game, but it'll be interesting to see how it runs when it finally does release here in the West. Now, the rest of the top 10, which we will get the top 30 in just a bit tomorrow, but the top 10, or top 11, I should say, is pretty much the usual suspects. You have stuff like Ring Fit Adventure, Animal Crossing continuing its crazy run. You have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Pokemon Sword and Shield, Splatoon 2, Super Smash Bros. All of these games have pretty much been in the top 30 for a very long time since they released. Now, when it comes to hardware, this is also interesting as well, because Sword Art Online is usually a franchise that will boost up hardware sales a bit. And I know that we're at the end of a generation, so you're not going to get those same boosts that you saw with Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet or Sword Art Online, the other games that we've seen. But the fact that the PS4 didn't really sell much at all, you can clearly see that Japan's kind of moved on, because what we've got here with the PS4, even with a big new Sword Art Online game, you've got 1,704 units with the PS4 and 1,721 units with the PS4 Pro. So we are looking at under 4,000 units. That's Wii U territory when it comes down to it. Now, the PS4 is old in Japan. It came out 2014, so it's been 6 years at this point, and obviously the PS5 is coming out, so some people are waiting for that. But I also think it's emblematic of what's going on in Japan and people just moving over to smartphone gaming and also hybrid / portable gaming with the Nintendo Switch, because the Switch sales, even though it didn't get a game like Sword Art Online, which is usually a big franchise in Japan, the system sold 96,879 units, which is very good for Japan, very good for Nintendo, without having a big new, I would say, like first party release or a big release outside of what we normally see. Yes, Powerful Pro Baseball, that's a big release for Japan, and it did well, but I'm not sure if it's like a system seller, traditionally what Japan looks at as one, although it's always done well. So to see that it sold nearly 100,000 units with not a big first party game or not a huge Japanese style franchise like Final Fantasy or Sword Art Online or something like that, right? It's pretty good. It's pretty good to see that, and it just shows the shift. Now, I think that Sony pretty much has already seen this, which I was discussing this with people on Twitter, and we've talked about it before. Sony's pretty much shifted over to the Western market. They're not necessarily too worried about what's going down in Japan and everything like that. They're just worried about the West and make sure the PS5 launches really good and they can get those units out there. We heard about the production boost from like 5 million to 9 or 10 million, something like that. So they really want to make sure that they have enough units for the Western market. Europe, the PlayStation 4 still sells really well, sometimes even outselling the Nintendo Switch in some areas. So the fact that the PS4 is still doing well in the West and still doing well in Europe, that's where their focus is going to be with the PlayStation 5. So I see them completely shifting away from the Japanese market. The fact that you had a brand new Sword Art Online game, and also with Powerful Pro Baseball, two pretty good franchises that should boost up sales a bit, especially with the price of the PS4 in Japan being as discounted as it is 6 years later. The fact that it's not really doing anything, the numbers are getting dangerously low, just pretty much shows that most people have just moved on at this point. So Japanese developers, they are in an interesting conundrum, and I think it's kind of the same conundrum they were in with looking at like the PS Vita and kind of how that was doing, the 3DS, how that was doing, the transition to the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. The Wii U didn't take off the gate. They're kind of like, where do we go a bit, you know? So it was a little bit, I would say, sparse for Japanese developers at the beginning of the generation. Now, I don't think we're going to see that as much with this upcoming generation. I think a lot of the Japanese developers like Bandai Namco, Square Enix, Koei Tecmo, they've kind of mobilized things so they can support the next generation systems quicker. But I think that they're going to also make sure that they throw some games here and there at the Switch, because you can't deny kind of what's going on there, right? Look at the Switch sales. Obviously in Japan, it's doing extremely well. People are buying it at a rapid pace, and Nintendo's going to continue to support the system with games, so we're going to continue to see good sales. Now, one of the things that I get asked quite a bit is like, what's going on with Nintendo? How are they going to be able to combat or go against the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X? And you know what? I don't really look at it that way. Honestly, I don't. And here's the reason why I don't look at it that way. Microsoft and Sony, they make systems that are very similar, right? They have the x86, they have the SSD, they have kind of the same market that they're going for with third parties and everything like that. Now, Sony obviously has their first-party studios that are going to be doing really well and keep on making great games, but Microsoft has also started to hire a bunch and kind of buy a bunch of first-party games and want to get into that as well, because the Xbox One just didn't have enough good first-party games. They're going for the same piece of the pie, you know, they're going for that same market with everything, with their systems, their architecture, and probably the pricing is going to be right around the same as well. Whereas with the Nintendo Switch, obviously they're not going to get all of that big Western support. That's where Microsoft and Sony really make all of their money, is the West, you know, whereas Nintendo's much more balanced with the Japanese market along with the West and Europe. It's really more balanced than what we see with Sony and Microsoft. So Nintendo, they're going to have the cheapest system on the market, obviously, with the Nintendo Switch Lite, and they already have a huge library of games, and they don't really have to worry about getting into this high-powered market. They have a cheap system, they have great first-party games, they're going to have big blockbuster selling type of games, they're going to have Mario or whatever else they decide to do later this year. They're going to have that, so there's no need to really compete or have to combat that in any way. It's not a head-to-head comparison and matchup, because they do things very differently. So when people tell me, oh, what's Nintendo going to do? They're not going to have anything. Sales are going to drop off the cliff. Whatever the case is, I'm like, why? If sales haven't really dropped off the cliff at this point, why would they later? Are people going to say, oh, now that this system's out, I'm not going to buy this cheap Switch Lite and buy these Nintendo games that I want and all of a sudden buy this? I mean, maybe some, but pretty much data and everything shows that people will buy a Switch Lite or a regular Switch because it is cheaper and it has those first party games. And if they want to buy a higher powered system like an Xbox One X or a PS4 Pro, or now with the next generation systems coming, if they want to buy that, they'll just buy those. Some people will have both. Some people will just opt for PC and also Nintendo Switch. And then there's just going to be the people that are just Nintendo fans that just want to buy and play Mario and Xenoblade and Smash Brothers and all the great games for the gameplay and not how much teraflops and power a system has. So it's not a head-to-head comparison, guys. It's not something that Nintendo's looking at and saying, oh my gosh, now we really have to prepare and get ready, because they're not going to have anything to counteract what the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X has. They're not going to have a Nintendo Switch Pro or some powerful hybrid device that can all of a sudden play all of these Western third-party games and has an SSD built in and x86 and all this stuff. They're just not going to have that. They're just going to continue doing what they're doing and kind of just stick with that and go with the pace of their software and sell the system. I mean, we're looking at probably around 60 million units at this point, and by the end of the year, with maybe these Mario games that are coming out, it's probably going to be around 70 million by the end of the year or so, 70 something million by next year for sure. So that's already a success right there. And even if they taper off and it kind of goes off to 80 million, 90 million, that's still really good, above the Nintendo 3DS, well above the Wii U, better than the NES, Super Nintendo, GameCube, and the N64. So Nintendo already did pretty good there. So that's not bad at all, but I think they're going to do way better than 80 million units. I think they're going to do 90 to 100 million whenever they decide to stop making Nintendo Switches and do their next system. So to me, I think that Nintendo has a good track. I think that they're going to be okay. I don't really feel that there's going to be any issues. And I think that people are going to buy both, or people are just going to wait and buy what they want to. And people that want to play Nintendo first-party games are going to continue playing those great games. So what are you guys' thoughts on what I had to say here and the sales numbers in addition to the next-gen stuff? I'd love to hear them in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Check out the links in the description. We've got Twitter. Go and give us a follow on there. Stay up to date on all the latest gaming news and information. Also, make sure you like, comment, and share this video if you can. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.